Welcome to the Point of Service Meal Count Refresher Training for Childcare Centers participating in the CACFP. The objectives of this webinar are to review point of service in the CACFP, review how to record daily meal counts, and identify key reminders and best practices. Point of service. The definition of point of service is the point at which the participants have been served all the required food components for a specific meal type, such as breakfast, lunch, snack, or supper, and before the participant leaves the table. Agencies who participate in the CACFP are reimbursed for the number of meals and snacks they serve to their CACFP enrolled children each day. Point of service meal counts is the way to count meals for reimbursement. The meal counts must be recorded at the time each meal or snack is served. Staff are not allowed to pre-record counts before the meal is served. Forecasting which children will be served is not acceptable. Staff are not allowed to wait until the end of the day either, because that is no longer point of service. Recalling, relying on your memory, is also not acceptable. Point of service is only acceptable when recorded at the point the meal was served. Now let's watch a quick video clip on point of service. Point of service can be done manually or kept through an electronic system. If an agency is transferring manual point of service to an electronic system, then they have to keep the original document, that paper copy.
In addition, you must record point of service, POS. Point of service is a daily count of the number of meals served to enrolled children, taken at the time of service. It is documented once the child receives all of the meal components, including the milk component of a reimbursable meal. It must be recorded and maintained for 3 years, plus the current year, by all participating CACFP providers. A CACFP reviewer will ask for these records during a review.
Point of service and attendance must be separate. Your point of service, which is your check sheet that the children did receive a reimbursable meal, cannot count as attendance.
Monthly point of service numbers are reported so providers can receive reimbursements for their meals. Furthermore, water must be available during the meal service and throughout the day for all enrolled children.
Now that we watched a quick video clip on point of service, let's take a closer look on how to count meals in the Child and Adult Care Food Program. After serving a child a meal that meets CACFP meal pattern requirements, including milk, the program needs to mark off that the child did receive a meal. For example, Chris has received a reimbursable lunch with all food components. The teacher finds Chris's name on the point of service record, then finds the correct meal type and marks off on the meal count record that they have received a reimbursable lunch. This is how to conduct point of service in the CACFP. It is important to have a system that works for your program and to train all your teachers and staff to complete the point of service correctly. Each tally mark represents a federal reimbursement. True or false? Child care centers must maintain both daily attendance and point of service meal counts. It's true. Child care centers must maintain daily attendance and point of service meal counts. Records need to be maintained for 4 years. That's 3 years plus the current year. Records must be available on site during the compliance reviews. Here's another example of a point of service record for one meal type. In this example, it is lunch. Use check marks or other notations to show which children receive a reimbursable meal. Be mindful of check marks and X's. Agencies should have a system to identify a present and an absent for a meal. It is also recommended not to leave a box blank for the meal count. Either use an X or a dash to indicate that the meal was not served. As per compliance reviews, leaving it blank creates confusion, and sometimes the staff may think they missed checking it off and may check it off. Whatever you do, please make sure it is legible and it's consistent. This form allows staff to tally the total number of meals for each child. It is recommended to use a coding system for each child eligibility level. Eligibility codes represent whether that child is eligible for free, reduced, or paid meals. Income eligibility information is confidential, so setting up a code for each category is needed. Only staff who determine eligibility and consolidate claims should know a child's eligibility. It is best practice to only add the eligibility codes at the end of the week as staff tally and cross-check point of service records. Even though there are codes, it's still best practice to keep this information safe. Agencies should have a system in place to complete point of service and have their staff trained on the system. Once a system is established, it is important to observe employees taking point of service for accuracy. This form includes attendance to minimize paperwork, but remember you cannot use attendance as point of service. Agencies should still keep a separate attendance. The attendance on a point of service sheet serves as a backup tool to help with accountability. Remember, a child cannot be served a meal if they are not in attendance. Also, a child in attendance may not always receive a meal due to illness or the parent brings in lunch, etc. Either way, these children should not be marked or claimed. Customizable sample forms are available to download from the Mars Resource Center. These sheets can be organized differently based on your center size, classroom divisions, and any other organizational structures an agency may have. For field trips, the point of service record should be taken on the field trip and completed at the time the meal is served, not as they leave the center. Child care centers have to email their specialists about any field trips or off-site operations, and then we will communicate that information to the compliance team. Let's look at another example. Take a look at how these names are listed. Do you see any inconsistencies? All of the names are not all listed in the same way, such as last name and first name. Johnny Brooks, Simone Harper, and Alicia Mendez do not have their names listed in the same way as the others. This could cause confusion when counting and consolidating meals. To stay consistent, stick to one system and train your staff on the system. Another problem with this point of service record is that you have to be careful on using overt identification to maintain confidentiality. You shouldn't use codes as FRP on point of service records. Instead, use ABC or 123. An agency can also use color or highlighting or grouping on the point of service record to help with the meal count consolidation. In this example, all the A's are highlighted. Agencies who have infants should also conduct point of service for infant meals as well. For infants, they should be on their own individual feeding schedules, but the process is similar. Here's an example of a point of service meal chart for one infant. The agency will record a meal or snack when the program supplies all the components or if the parent garden supplies only one component. Agencies can also be reimbursed for breast milk. For more information on infant point of service, please contact your program specialist. Now that we have learned how to correctly complete point of service, the next step is to consolidate or add all together the meal counts. It is best practice to do this daily or weekly and to have another staff member check and verify that the numbers are correct. Counting many check marks can be taxing. If any of the numbers are incorrect and claimed, it may lead to meals being disallowed and a corrective action. Let's walk through how to count these numbers. Remember, a participant must have a check for attendance and for a meal for it to count toward your daily meal totals and weekly meal totals. All right, first things first, calculate the daily attendance for each day. This is done by finding the attendance column next to the day of the week you're working on and adding up the check marks down the column. Place the number of participants present for the day in the space that asks for the daily attendance total. Do not count those absent into this number. Calculate the daily meal totals for each day by adding up the meals served each day of the week. This is done by finding each days of the week column and adding up the check marks down the column. Place the number of meals for the day in the space that asks for the daily meal total. Remember, a participant must have a check mark for attendance and for a meal for it to count into your daily meal totals and weekly meal totals. Total the daily meals received by each participant for the week. This is done by selecting one participant and adding the total number of meals horizontally. received on each day. You'll go one by one and add up all the meals horizontally. Total the meal counts by reimbursement category for claim. Use the information in the column entitled Eligibility Category Code. Cross-check your total meals by adding the daily meals across all days. This should be the same as the result of adding the column labeled meal totals. Add the daily attendance to get the weekly attendance. All right. Agencies must ensure fiscal accountability and that the CACFP will operate in accordance with regulatory requirements. To demonstrate program accountability, agencies must document and keep records of point of service correctly. I'm going to ask 3 questions on point of service accountability to make sure everyone feels comfortable. For the first question, the children are eating lunch at the center. The point of service is taken after the tables are cleaned off. Does this satisfy point of service accountability? No, this does not satisfy point of service accountability because the person taking point of service is relying on recall. Point of service is conducted at the time a reimbursement meal or snack is being served. Question 2. During breakfast, a teacher takes point of service at the time her coworker serves the reimbursable meal. However, some of the children wind up not eating their meal. Does this satisfy point of service accountability? Yes, as long as the meal served meets the meal pattern. If a child refuses to eat or eats only a small amount, the meal is still reimbursable. Question number 3. Lunch is being served at the center, and the teacher is using the attendance list to record point of service. Does this satisfy point of service accountability? No. Point of service is conducted at the time a reimbursable meal or snack is being served. Some children who attend the program may not receive a meal for various reasons. Either they were sent home because they were sick, or they brought food from home, or have a doctor's appointment, etc. So no, this does not satisfy point of service accountability. All right, let's talk about some best practices. Point of service records are directly connected to the federal reimbursement. Especially with high staff turnover rate, it is important for consistency and frequent training. Staff should not know the category codes. This information is only for the people who are doing the claim consolidation. Use consistent marking for your attendance and point of service records. Have a system in place and train staff doing point of service. Organize your records. Good organization is one of the best ways to be successful in the CACFP. Consolidate your numbers at the end of the week versus the end of the month. This will allow for fewer errors. It is best practice to also add eligibility codes at the end of the week when consolidating numbers for further safety and confidentiality. Check, check, verify. After the numbers have been consolidated, have another staff member check the numbers for accuracy and verify that the procedure has been done correctly. If these records are not completed correctly, use this opportunity to retrain your staff. Thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar on point of service meal counts in the CACFP. The Office of School and Community Nutrition Programs appreciates your attention during this brief training. Please go back to any sections that may have been confusing and feel free to share with other staff and use in staff training for anyone who is responsible for point of service. If you have any additional questions, contact your program specialists. Thank you.